We could very well have a pandemic. The Obamas are out with a new movie, which they're predicting widespread cyber attacks and power outages in the United States. We could experience food shortages, for example. So I think they will do anything possible to hold on to power. But as a supporter of Donald Trump and as a Republican, we don't intend to let them do that. So I don't even rule out a terrorist attack on American soil.
Yeah, I think it's become such an obsession with identity, and it's become very toxic too post-2020 in America, where we had everybody locked down in their homes. Kids were going down these spiral rabbit holes online, going on Tumblr and TikTok, being told that, oh, if you kind of feel a little uncomfortable in your body, maybe you're actually transgender.
And welcome to Hannity. Tonight we begin with a Fox News alert. The Epstein files, they have been released, and we are now learning the names of more than 150 individuals allegedly associated with the powerful convicted pedophile. That includes former President Bill Clinton.
Willkommen zu einer neuen Ausgabe von USA-Report, und wir werden heute über die Veröffentlichung der 150 Namen aus der Epstein-Akte sprechen. Wie ihr wahrscheinlich schon gehört habt, sind sehr brisante Namen in diesen Fluglisten enthalten, wie zum Beispiel Bill Clinton.
The ultra-wealthy convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, we know, is dead, but he leaves behind what is a long trail of high-profile associates and friends, including many who knew about or may have participated in his massive web of sexual abuse. To date, no one other than Epstein and his partner, Ghislaine Maxwell, have ever been charged or convicted in connection with their, quote, underage sex trafficking ring and allegations. But tonight, a court has just unsealed a list of names in a civil suit, this one brought by one of Epstein's alleged victims. Now, before we get to the names and the allegations, here is a quick reminder. For decades, Jeffrey Epstein was shrouded in mystery. He was once regarded as a billionaire investor. No one seemed to know how Epstein became so wealthy and so well connected. He owned multiple private planes, a fleet of cars, several massive estates all across the country, including what was the largest home right there in New York City. Epstein even had his very own private island named, quote, Little St. James. Now, today, many of you know it as, quote, Pedophile Island, based on numerous allegations that young girls were trafficked to Epstein's Island and that they were, in fact, abused. They were also abused, allegations, according to many, at his Palm Beach mansion, his home in New York, his sprawling ranch in New Mexico, and his luxury apartment in Paris and France. At the very same time, Epstein hung out with some of the most well-connected people on earth, including billionaires, actors, world leaders, and according to flight logs, former President Bill Clinton took nearly 24 flights on Epstein's private planes, including the jet that came to be known as the Lolita Express. And tonight's unsealed documents do mention the former president, including this exchange with one of Epstein's victims. Quote, Epstein said that one time Clinton liked them young, referring to girls. Now, keep in mind, these are allegations. It's from a civil suit, and that was a suit that was settled and have not been proven in a court of law. Former President Clinton has denied any wrongdoing. Now, of course, Clinton is not the only high-profile name released tonight.
Prince Andrew. Stephen Hawking wurde auch genannt, und man hat eine sehr brisante E-Mail veröffentlicht, wo ein Stephen Hawking für eine Orgie auf Epstein Island erbeten hat. Donald Trump wurde auch erwähnt. Da hat sich aber dann herausgestellt, was jetzt sehr viele Demokraten und Leute, die auf dieser Insel waren oder auch in diesen Verbrechen verwickelt wurden und waren, gehofft haben, dass es nicht so weit kommt. Aber das Opfer hat bestätigt bei einer Zeugenaussage, dass Trump, ehemaliger Präsident von den USA, nicht auf der Insel war. Er war nicht bei Orgien in New York City beteiligt. Er war nicht bei Vergewaltigung von Minderjährigen in New Mexico. Sozusagen sind alle Wünsche der Demokraten Donald Trump für diesen neuen Wahlgang mit der Schmierliste, den Verbrechen von Jeffrey Epstein zu verknüpfen, nicht erfolgreich gewesen, was aber bei den Veröffentlichungen dieser Akten rausgekommen ist, dass Bill Clinton 50 Mal erwähnt wurde, wie ich bereits erwähnt habe. Er hat über 2 Dutzende Male mit dem Lolita Express geflogen ist und dass er seine Opfer sehr jung mag. Stephen Hawking mag Orgien. Prince Andrew wurde beschuldigt bei der Zeugenaussage, junge Mädchen zu sexuellen Akten gezwungen zu haben. Und das Faszinierende ist, dass durch all diese Veröffentlichungen und Namen bis heute keiner der in Verbindung gebrachten Personen, Schauspieler, Roleplayers, Politiker jemals in einen Gerichtssaal gezerrt wurden und sich damit auseinandersetzen mussten oder ihre Aussage dazu bringen mussten, warum sie denn da waren, warum sie das unterstützt haben. Das hoffentlich ändert sich jetzt durch die sehr mutige Richterin, die es veranlasst hat, diese Akten zu veröffentlichen. Hoffen wir mal, dass diese Richterin nicht das Schicksal aller so anderen Whistleblower und mutigen Menschen, die über die Clinton-Familie Informationen preisgegeben haben, an einem sehr, wie sagen wir jetzt am besten, nicht so ganz klaren Selbstmord dahingeschieden sind. Andere Themen für heute sind natürlich auch Turning Point USA. Wir waren im Dezember bei dem America Fest von Jack Posiak und Charlie Kirk. Wir hatten die Chance, Roger Stone zu interviewen. Er ist ein ehemaliger Berater von Donald J. Trump gewesen. Er hat über 13 US-amerikanische Präsidenten begleitet in seiner langen politischen Karriere und wir werden hören, was er über den amerikanischen Traum.
I'm Roger Stone. I'm a 45-year veteran of American politics. I'm specifically a veteran of 13 national Republican presidential candidates. I started with President Richard Nixon, 1968, 1972. Worked for Governor, later President Ronald Reagan, 1976, 1980, and 1984. Worked for Senator Bob Dole, one of the greatest Americans of the 20th century, and then, of course, a very early advisor and supporter of President Donald Trump. I'm also a New York Times best-selling author, and I'm the host of a daily show at StoneZone.live.
Thank you so much. Can you please explain? You have a very long history in politics and with several like Republican and also Democrat presidents. And do you see in all the time where you served your country in politics the shift from a more conservative to a very far left policy and ideology in the American politics?
Well, I think there was a time in America where we did have liberals and conservatives. The Democratic Party tended to be the more liberal party. The Republican Party tended to be the more conservative party. Both parties believed in capitalism. Both parties believed in free enterprise. Both parties were anti-communist. Both parties believed in a strong national defense. That has changed. The Democratic Party of John F. Kennedy, of Harry Truman, the moderate Democratic Party no longer exists. The Democratic Party in this country has been taken over by a radical socialist, if not Marxist, elite, and they operate outside the norms of politics. So now we face, I think, what could be our last election. The Democrats under Joe Biden are illicitly using the Justice Department to try to prosecute Donald Trump. This is something, when one party is trying to lock up the leading candidate of the other party, this is something you would see in communist China or in communist Cuba or in the old Soviet Union, but not something you would expect to see in the United States. But nonetheless, that's what they're trying to do.
So do you think there will be actually an election this year? Because there are a lot of rumors that even the Democratic Party tries to create crises or wars, what makes maybe an election very difficult, because the next pandemic is waiting on the door, because we already heard about this white pneumonia from China. So what are your thoughts about that?
I think the next 11 months will be tumultuous. I think that the Democrats who are currently running the country are capable of any crime, including a full-out war with Russia. Then they could use the War Powers Act to postpone indefinitely the next election. We could very well have a pandemic. The Obamas are out with a new movie, which they're predicting widespread cyber attacks and power outages in the United States. We could experience food shortages, for example. So I think they will do anything possible to hold on to power. But as a supporter of Donald Trump and as a Republican, we don't intend to let them do that. So I don't even rule out a terrorist attack on American soil. So we're in for very difficult and complicated times. But in the end, I'm highly confident, actually, that Trump will win and the American nation will be restored.
So do you think there is still a hope of the American dream?
Well, Trump said this yesterday. As long as Joe Biden is president, no. Interest rates, lack of capital, a very soft economy. No, I think the American dream is dead. Contrast that with just a few years ago when we had the most robust economy in our history. Low gasoline prices, almost no inflation, virtually no unemployment. We had unprecedented peace and prosperity. Can we get back there? Yes, we definitely can.
Thank you so much. Do you have something to say for the European audience about what you think is very important? Because the European Union is very liberal and very left-sided. And do you think they should look more into what Donald Trump did than instead of just bullying at him and saying that he was incompetent, because we actually did a really good job in his country?
Yeah, I mean, nothing the European Union says is true. I'm not a fan of the Russians. I'm not a supporter of Putin. But Putin has no plans to take over Germany. That's a joke. I'll tell you what Putin doesn't want. He doesn't want NATO missiles mounted in Ukraine, pointed at his country in violation of the Budapest Memorandum that we signed with the Russians in 1994. That's what this war is really about. And the idea that if we don't ship billions to Zelensky so he can essentially steal the money, that there's going to be a Putin invasion of Poland or Germany or France is ridiculous. It's just not true.
Thank you so much. I have the same idea, because I tried to explain that with the history, saying America had the same problem with the Soviet Union in Cuba. America didn't want it, that they bring
Correct, in 1962.
Yes, so
it's analogous. We did not want the Russians to mount missiles pointed at the United States 90 miles off our shore. President Kennedy was adamant about that. It's no different than what the Russians are doing today. Putin warned Ukraine multiple times if they insisted to move forward to join NATO, which is really about the missiles. It's not just membership, it's the missiles. That he would have no choice but to attack, and he did.
Dann werden wir hören über Gays Against Groomers. Sie sind, wie der Name schon sagt, gegen das Groomen.
Hi, my name is David Kitack. I'm a member of Gays Against Groomers and a content creator for them. You can find me online at American David on Instagram and Twitter. The reason I joined the group and the reason I'm in this fight is that this cultural issue will be one that 10, 20 years from now, people are going to ask, where were you and what were you doing at the time that they were targeting children with this very, very toxic and powerful ideology? And I'm proud to be a part of the fight to stand up for children's innocence, for women's rights, women's privacy, and women's right to compete in sports on a fair and even ground. I think that's so important. These are things that people didn't even think twice about questioning just a few years ago, and now it is considered a very controversial opinion, which shows you how far we've slid down. And personal liberty and freedom has always been very important to me because my parents were refugees from Soviet Russia, so especially religious freedom is important to me. And on the gender ideology left, they very much target religious people, and because it's kind of become its own religion and its own right, where they have their high priests and they tell you what is okay to think at whatever time. They tell you what definitions of man, woman, gay, straight, bisexual is allowed. And we're just not going to have that. We have a right to think for ourselves in this country for now, and that's what's beautiful. So
So, when did you think it's going to be too far for the LGBTQ movement? When was the breaking point, the red line they crossed when you said, okay, I can't tolerate that anymore, even that I'm gay and I'm supporting them because everyone has his rights to live their life like they want. But at what point did you say, okay, that's enough?
Great question. So I think probably about the same time where a lot of people felt as soon as they started targeting children, younger and younger and younger, with their ideological and sexual education for middle school and elementary school students. Like, that's outrageous. I don't care if you're talking about gay sex or straight sex, you shouldn't be talking to children about sex, period. So the reason they get away with it is because it's cloaked in the LGBT, so that way it becomes impervious to criticism. Like, you can't criticize it because then you're homophobic, you're transphobic. I've been called every name in the book. I don't care anymore. I've been called a fascist, a Nazi, a right-winger, a homophobe, a transphobe. It's ridiculous. And I had my separation from it even before they started targeting children, when they just started telling me how to think and how to vote based on my sexuality, as if I don't also pay taxes, as if I don't also care about war and gas prices and everything else. Like, we're holistic human beings. We're not just our sexual identity. And that becomes really frustrating to be told what to think, especially from like straight allies. It's hilarious. So I think as soon as they started targeting children, that was the absolute tipping point. Like, no going back, done. But it's been a mess for a few years now.
Do you think that a lot of, or a part of the transgender people who are saying now, oh, I'm transgender, trying to use this sexuality or this state of their thinking who they are to get closer to children and to rape them, like as male men say, oh, I'm a transgender, I feel like I'm a woman, I go on that toilet now?
Yeah, I think it's become such an obsession with identity, and it's become very toxic too post-2020 in America, where we had everybody locked down in their homes. Kids were going down these spiral rabbit holes online, going on Tumblr and TikTok, being told that, oh, if you kind of feel a little uncomfortable in your body, maybe you're actually transgender. And another layer to that was in 2020, we had George Floyd and the BLM movement, where it was very unpopular to be white in this country. So you're giving young kids a way to become a minority without having to actually do anything or change anything about themselves. So no, I'm not just a plain white person, now I'm non-binary or gender fluid or transgender. So it gives them a way of being a protected class and being a minority that's impervious to criticism. And that's super dangerous. And especially now where the whole self-ID has been taken to the nth degree, where we're supposed to let a full-grown man who hasn't changed anything about himself into the bathroom where someone's daughter is going to be there. I think that's ridiculous. And it's cognitive dissonance to not understand that that's dangerous.
Okay, and thank you so much. Do you want to say something to the audience, what that they can think about, like who are very liberal in that topic, that they maybe come and think again?
Something that I think people need to realize is that lately it's gone beyond just normalization of grooming and child targeting. It's become glamorized because the latest examples of targeting of children has been Epstein's private plane. All of these millionaires, kings, queens on the private islands with that. We're basically telling people that there's some kind of interest and tie to the elite and child abuse, you know? So and I compare it to like haute couture and high fashion. Regular people will see it and they'll be like, oh, that's ugly, I don't understand it. But all of these really rich, educated people are into it, so maybe there's something there. And that's really dangerous. We've gotten to the glamorization point of it, especially since last year with the Balenciaga ad campaign, where they literally had child porn cases for Supreme Court cases about cartoon child porn, and then children passed out next to BDSM gear. Like, clearly, they're trying to speak to a certain audience that's very, very dark, and people aren't realizing that it's actually becoming into the mainstream more and more. So I think that's something to think about for sure.